Welcome to another episode of Chax Chat. Join Chad Chilius and me, Dax Castro, where each week we wax poetic about document accessibility topics, tips, and the struggle of remediation and compliance. So sit back, grab your favorite mug of whatever, and let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. Today's podcast is sponsored by Venngage. Venngage is not just a design platform, but it's also about creating stunning visuals and about inclusivity and accessibility. Venngage doesn't just simplify your design process, but it takes it up a notch higher with built-in accessibility features. Whether you're looking to run an accessibility check on your designs or export them in the PDF UA format, Venngage has you covered. So head on over to venngage.com and check them out. My name is Chad Chilius. I'm an Adobe certified instructor and one of the accessibility wizards here at Chax Training and Consulting.
And my name is Dax Castro. I am a senior accessibility trainer here at Chax Training and Consulting. And Chad and I are both certified as accessible document specialists by the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. And if you'd like some more information about that, head on over to accessibilityassociation.org/certifications. Hey, Chad, while we're talking about IAAP, I actually was searching for something earlier today, and I came across a white paper that IAAP had written on motivations for adopting accessibility principles by organizations. I'm going to see if I can find that real quick. All right. So I was able to find it. And in fact, we'll post a link in the show notes, but I'm going to share some screen for the purposes of those watching the video. By the way, if you didn't know, if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, we also host the video version on YouTube. So you can search for Chax Chat on YouTube and you can get us. So this is the IAAP white paper on understanding organizational approaches to accessibility. And it is a great document that talks about what some of the motivations are. And they've got some accessible bar charts and line graphs, courtesy of Chax Training and Consulting. I know that work anywhere. But they've got some of the top 3 motivators for large organizations, 500 employees or more. And it shows that legal risk compliance, of course, is the top, right?
Sure.
Yeah. And then inclusion of all audiences is number 2. And then corporate social responsibility is number 3. And I find that interesting because a lot of organizations will have these center of excellences, and they are things like racial equality and gender equality or gender identity or home care, carers organizations within and women in general, women in business, organizations within their organization that are like support groups or focus groups. And so corporate social responsibility, I think, falls under that. And so you're seeing a lot more of those in general. So yeah, good stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go through the whole report, but there's some really good stuff in here, and it is 19 pages. So if you're looking for understanding how your organization might fit into this, it's definitely a great document to look at. Not only that, I will say it is tagged pretty well, if I do say so myself. So just do a search for understanding organizational approaches to accessibility, and maybe add IAAP in there as the keyword, and it should come right up. So good stuff. Good stuff.
Very good.
Yeah. So today, Chad, I want to talk about something that is on my mind every single day. And I tell you why I want to talk about it. Because I'm so tired of having it on my mind every single day. What I'm talking about is span tags. We get this question daily. Yes. What do I do with span tags? Why are span tags there? How can I remove these span tags, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the answer to the question of why are they there, we don't have a good answer for that, right?
Well, I sort of have a good answer. Is when you're in InDesign, if you want to reduce the amount of span tags you have, use more paragraph styles. Paragraph styles reduce span tags. When you break the paragraph style by adding a manual style to something, the only way that InDesign has to keep track of that manual adjustment is by creating a span tag.
Well, I mean, the real cause is the overrides, right? I
Right.
mean, it's great if you use paragraph styles, but if you've gone into that text and you have a bunch of overrides in there,
Yep.
each of those overrides is going to generate a span tag. Okay.
Yeah.
But
And if you want to see where those overrides are, if you go into your paragraph styles Dropbox, I'm going to call it, you lost my train of thought there, the paragraph styles Docker, and you look in the upper right hand corner, you'll see this little lightning bolt, but next to it is a little A with a plus inside some brackets. And if you click on that, it'll highlight everything that is a override in light blue.
Yep. And you can also see it, like if you click in the text and you look at your paragraph style is going to have a plus sign next to it if there's an override there, right? So
yes.
Now again, fundamentally, overrides are not a big deal, and overrides Agreed. Are just part of the design process, right? Yep. I mean, you have a paragraph and it has a style applied, but you got to track that paragraph a little bit to make it fit. Yep. That's an override. But is it a big deal? Not really. You're going to get span tags. And I guess the bigger discussion to have about span tags is that they're not a problem, right? They anybody, and you've heard Dax preach this, that you want to test your documents using a screen reader, using assistive technology. And if you did that, you would know that span tags are not read, right? It's not like you're reading the document and it says this span was span. It does not voice those span tags. But for those of us who are a little OCD and like that really clean tag structure, I get it, right? I get it. Sure. You open it up and you see all those span tags. You're like, oh, I want to get rid of them. But fundamentally, they're not a problem.
We have heard from some people, I'm not going to mention names because I don't want to sling mud, that span tags cause some kind of screen reader slowdown. I will tell you, I listen using a screen reader, JAWS and NVDA, every single day that I'm working, at least for a half hour. I have never once heard any kind of pause or rift or interruption using a screen reader when there's a span tag listening to the document.
I'm going to somewhat disagree with you, but
how dare you?
But there's a reason that I'm doing this, right? And it it's because of another problem. Okay. So if you use a screen reader and the method by which you read content,
you're going to go here.
I'm going there, man. I'm going there. Right. And it's only because it's really close to my heart, because one of my clients has subject matter experts who are in fact blind, who are testing their documents. And one of their SMEs prefers to read by simply tapping the down arrow key.
Right.
When you do that, it reads the text in chunks.
Yep.
Right. So it'll read like the first 7 words of the paragraph. And you're like, well, why did it stop there? And then you got to press the down arrow key again to have it keep going.
Yep.
And I believe that part of that problem, part of the reason why you get that, is because the marked content, right? Basically the information within the span tags is broken up into these separate chunks. And if you choose to read that way, yes, in fact, you are kind of experience the result of those span tags. But the reality is that screen readers have a technique where if you press insert down arrow key, it reads from that point forward, and it will not get hung up on those individual chunks of marked content. And it will read it in a very, very nice way.
Well, and the thing to also note is that I'm looking for a Slack comment because this was, so I'm on the Slack A11Y channel, and then this person says, I'm trying to get to the initial, they said that Adobe is a $21 billion company and they should be able to fix this. And why are they blah, 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 blah about all the span tags and the sometimes there's not even a span tag. It InDesign will just break the text up into multiple content objects. You'll open that
That's
P
possible
tag
too.
and there'll just be a series of content objects. So I wrote in reply, that $21 billion company does not have a team focused on accessibility. Accessibility improvements at Adobe are limited to not breaking decades-old code that no one currently working at Adobe can touch without breaking. Now, that's a little absolutist. I won't say that that's exactly true, but here's how I defend, right? So while you can say a $21 billion company, the InDesign team is a very few developers who did not write the original code and who are not accessibility experts by any means. No one is blaming anyone, but just like any tool, using it with the features available is correct. To say, well, I'm just pressing the down arrow is your preference. And it's not fair to hold the content creator, us, responsible to your preferences for a perfectly appropriate, when there is a perfectly appropriate keyboard command that accomplishes the very task you want to do, right? Which in this case is the insert down arrow. Yep. Right? So if you want to change the behavior of the down arrow, it'd be a good idea to talk with JAWS or NVDA and say, hey, give me the ability to toggle the functionality of the down arrow. Let me in my preferences say, when I press the down arrow, I want it to just continuously read, or I want it to read to the next thing. Rather than blaming Adobe or Acrobat developers or content creators for that matter, as readers, it's your responsibility to know how to use the tools that have been created to specifically improve the ability to digest content, not to simply say, this is the way I like to do it.
Agreed. And so he's really complaining about a problem that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a problem for him because he's not using the tool the right way. It's like saying, I'd like to use the left pedal to press the gas and the right pedal to use the brake because I'm left-handed. So does that mean they're supposed to make left-handed cars?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Good point. Really good point.
Use the tool the way the tool is designed. There is a functionality. Now, I would agree if there wasn't a way to read from that point forward. If the control down arrow didn't exist, I would be more likely on the side of the user than the developer.
Right, because then that's going to affect the user experience, right?
Yeah.
And nobody wants your screen reader to pause a third of the way through the paragraph, right?
Yep.
You know, it kind of stops abruptly, and you're like waiting with bated breath. Okay, what's next? You know what I mean? Like it's awkward, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important for everybody who's listening, right? And again, if you follow Dax and my advice and you do test with a screen reader, it's important to use that screen reader appropriately, right? Yeah. I mean, and we have Chax on the Chax website. We have a NVDA keyboard shortcuts
download
checklist. Download. And it'll show you, and it's not all of the shortcuts, but it's the ones that Dax and I feel are the ones you're most likely to actually use to test a document, you know? But
I always say the minimum key you need to know, first of all, you need to know how to pause the voice for NVDA, right? Which is your shift key is one of the only keys that you can press that doesn't actually do something else. So it's the most safe key you can press to stop it momentarily, right? The other thing you should know is insert M for mouse tracking turns off NVDA's voicing of everything your mouse touches. And I think that's the most crucial one people don't know to turn off when you first start using NVDA.
Well, especially for testers, right? Yeah. Like a native screen reader user doesn't need that because they're not using a mouse, right? But for those of us who are testing, and we're kind of doing a combination of screen reader testing, but then we're like, oh, I gotta change the view setting or something like that, and then NVDA is like speaking everything that we're hovering over. So that's a really good shortcut, Dax, the insert M to say, don't do that, please. You know, just Yeah.
And the final one is insert S. And S for silence is a toggle. It's a 3-way toggle. Speech mode talk, speech mode beeps, which I still have no idea why somebody would use, and then speech mode off. And
Yeah.
so when you toggle those 3, you can turn it off for a while, go work on the tags tree without closing NVDA. But just remember, anything you do to a document, you have to restart NVDA before it will actually pick up any changes you've made, because NVDA caches that entire document when it first starts up. So if you change a tag and you go in and listen to it, you're like, why didn't it change? I just changed it. That's the reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another good one. From working with a lot of these native screen reader users, I've discovered that a lot of them prefer to have only the current page read at a time.
Sure.
They prefer to jump to whatever page they want and then read the page, where I think you and I kind of prefer that it reads the entire document. But if you open up a 650-page document, you're going to be sitting there for a long time before NVDA can cache it. So it's really, again, it's a preference. Totally.
Well, but I also think it goes back to every document we listen to is mostly accessible. Every document that screen reader user is listening to is mostly garbage. True. And if you had to wait 5 minutes or 15 minutes for a document to process only to hear a bunch of crap and gobbledygook,
that's a good
I would
point.
Be extremely frustrated.
Yep.
Right. So
Absolutely.
I totally understand why people copy and paste PDFs into Word, or why they only read current page only. You know, we use things like the H key or the insert F7 key to bring up the elements list just as a way to quickly jump to certain areas to check certain things. But it's not necessarily the way a screen reader user is going to digest a document on the regular.
I will tell you, Dax, I recently was wishing for screen reader behavior. And I'll tell you what it was. I don't know if you saw my LinkedIn post, but I complained because I was reading an email. Did you read that?
I did, about unsubscribes.
Yeah, I wanted to unsubscribe. And I'm looking at the bottom of the email. I'm like, I cannot find it. But the cool thing about a screen reader, like when you're using a screen reader, all I got to do is hit the tab key and it jumps to the next link.
Yep.
I was wanting that feature, but I didn't want to have to turn my screen reader on to do it, but that would have been super helpful to be able to just go link, 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 and it bounces to each link, and it'd be like, oh, there it is, But
I'll tell you what I would have done is I would have just pulled up the search, the Control F for find, and then try to find the word unsubscribe. But people writing emails have gotten wise to that. And because they know that you can run filters to activate any unsubscribe links. So they'll say, no longer want to receive this email, click here. So it's not always the word unsubscribe.
Well, and in this case, Dax, the link to unsubscribe was here.
Oh, the word here. Yeah.
The word here was the link. So, and it was funny because there were so many things wrong with it, right? Like I kind of like bad. I mean, they don't know who the email was from, but I bashed it because it was minimum color contrast. They didn't make the hyperlink look unique, and they didn't make the link meaningful text. Like it was just like, comedy of errors.
Well, it's accessibility benefits everyone, right?
It does. And like I said, as a sighted user, I could not find the link. I mean, it took me way too long to find that link.
Yeah. All right. So the next thing, along the same topic of span tags, Chad, you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. So very similar to span tags, in a tagged PDF, we also have container tags. Right. And they're very, very similar. It's just that one is at the top level of the tags tree and one is at the bottom level of the tags tree. Right. So like the span is like the finest. How do I explain that, Dax? Like the most specific tag that you can have in a PDF file. And the container tag is the most general tag you can have. So common container tags are document, part, div, section.
Yep.
Did I miss any?
Doc part is one.
That's a fun one.
So doc part is different. So, but what sucks about it, again, here's another issue where PDF UA has written a rule that says, hey, there's this thing called doc part. What happens if you open a document and the first heading is heading level 2 because it's a piece of a document and there's nothing before it because it's only pages 16 through 25 of a longer document. So if you try to run that document through a checker right now, it will fail.
Right.
But you're like, wait a minute. Info and relationship says this is a heading level 2. It's supposed to be a heading level 2, but the checker says, hey, you've got no heading level 1 in your document. And so go ahead.
Well, and here's the reality, right? Every checker complains about this, right? You must start with an H1 and your headings need to fall in sequence. Here's the ugly truth. The screen reader doesn't care. The screen reader is going to read it fine if you start with an H1 or not, and if your headings fall in sequence or not. The screen reader is fine. It will read it without a problem. It's just that the standards are the ones that are saying that they should fall in sequence for the best user experience.
Well, the checker is the thing saying it should fall in sequence because WCAG, in the WCAG requirement, it says specifically that it is, while it is a good idea to start with an H1 and move forward, that they realize that documents can contain logical reading material while skipping heading levels, that in a certain area, it might go from heading level 1 to heading level 3 and not have a heading level 2, and it's still programmatic. But the problem is screen reader checkers or accessibility checkers like the Acrobat checker and the Pack checker can't tell the difference between did you mean to do that or did you not mean to do that? So it's pass fail. So WCAG, even the rules for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines says it's okay, or it will happen that you have skipped headings. But because we're so beholden to these checkers and these passing reports, we get lost in the minutia. But so then as teachers, what do we teach? Well, I have to teach, here's what the rule is, but the reality is this other thing. And then PDF UA gives us the ability to circumvent this a little bit with this doc part. But does NVDA or JAWS or Acrobat recognize the doc part tag? Nope.
No. Yep.
Not at all. So
I just thought of another
frustrating
one. Non-struct.
Yeah, non-struct is an interesting one. Non-struct is like a span tag, but non-struct, I had a little misunderstanding about what it was supposed to be used for. So a non-struct is supposed to be used when there's no other appropriate tag available, that an H1 doesn't fit, a span doesn't fit, that it's this generic tag that just kind of is a tag. And I always thought, it can just replace everything, that you could put everything in a non-struct tag. And I did a little bit more research. I was talking to Paul Reyes at Alliant, and I think he kind of set me straight on that. And I had to go back and do some more digging. And, I don't often agree or I don't know what the word is there, but Paul and I don't always see eye to eye, but he was right, man. And so I went back and did a little more digging on that non-struct. And, while I'm never going to use a non-struct tag, I don't feel like it's appropriate. There's always an appropriate tag. I do understand the purpose. And, I see documents all the time from mostly automated sources where everything's a non-struct.
Well, it's kind of like the concept of the H tag.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's another really odd one. And we're not going to go into detail on that, but the H tag, you basically replace all of your numbered headings with just an H tag. Yeah. And then it becomes kind of like an ambiguous heading, when they're used. But again, I don't know that screen readers recognize it.
They do, but NVDA, one of them recognizes it wrong. One says heading level 2, the other one says heading level 1. So one recognizes it. So the idea here is, I know we said we weren't going to go into this, but if you use the H tag, you can only use the H tag. Every heading in your document must be just H. Yep. And that's saying, hey, there's no real hierarchy to this document. Everything's a heading level 1. My answer to that is, then why not just use a heading level 1? Because it's not just going to say heading, it's going to say heading level 1. In this case, one says 1 and one says heading level 2. So just use the right heading.
Just don't do it. InDesign has the H tag available. Just don't use it. Just don't try to use it. It'll mess you up.
Yeah. So the final ruling, the takeaway for container tags is, while you can use them, page 1, page 2. You might have your articles, have your articles set up so that your articles follow page 1, page 2, page 3. All your content for each of those is in there, or sidebars and things like that. It's really for your benefit, for your own grouping. It doesn't really make a difference to the content and how it's being read.
Yeah, I know, like when I teach people, my preference is I only have one container tag and everything goes into one article. That's my preference.
Sure.
A lot of the people I teach are like, can I create an article per page? I'm like, absolutely. It's not a problem.
That's exactly what I do, because it just makes it so much
preference. Go for it. That there's nothing wrong with that at all. Yeah.
Well, and for me, the reason I do that is because as I'm inside an InDesign document, it's very easy for me to go to page 6 and find that group of elements that's just page 6. While you still can do that, if you just go to your page 6 and touch any object on the page, it's going to highlight with a little blue square the item in your articles panel. For me, it's just easier to go to that folder that's page 6 and figure it out from there. So I don't think it really makes a difference. And if I've got a long document, honestly, made to tag has really made a difference in my use of those separate folders, because I don't have to go in to the tags tree really at all when I'm using made to tag in the PDF, because I can get it accessible 100% right out of InDesign. In fact, you have a class. We have created a new class on accessibilityunraveled.com for how to effectively use made to tag. And you're going to be teaching that class on May 1st online from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. And you can sign up for that class on our website, accessibilityunraveled.com. And if nothing else, there. Yeah, it's a free, the demo is a free 30-day trial. Go get the demo, install it wait till we hit the 30-day mark. I think we're already there, 15 days after. So if you install it by the time this podcast is released, which will actually be just, we may release this one early, Chad. I might release this next week. So you'll have a week or so to have the plugin installed. It'll run for 30 days. So you'll have it for the class. You'll just get a pop-up nag screen every so often, but then you could see the power of made to tag for getting documents in InDesign out accessible. And we've had amazing success. There's a few little bugs here and there,
but overall, I mean, I do not export accessible PDFs without made to tag anymore. It's not worth my time.
Yeah,
but
100% agree.
And to stem off of what you were saying, Dax, so it's a great idea for them to download. What's cool about Exeo, they give you a fully functioning 30-day trial. So it's a fully functioning version, no watermarks, no limits, no whatsoever. And if you sign up for our class, you will get a 10% off your purchase of made to tag.
Cool.
So awesome. It's kind of a benefit of signing up for the class. You'll save yourself. They get $650.
Yeah,
so $65, right? Yeah.
Awesome. And they have deep discounts for volume. So if you've got a large InDesign team and you're looking for that, we sound like salespeople here. We do represent made to tag, Exeo, but just know that when we've gone in and asked for volume discounts for 20 users, it's been substantial. Like big. So reach out to us. So anyway, but one thing to note about when you're using made to tag, you have to use the articles panel. Everything is predicated off the articles panel. And Chad, you've made a recent new development in the area of the articles panel and getting information in there. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah. So, this happened honestly completely by accident, because normally my workflow is I will add all of my content in a document to the articles panel. Then I'll go to the layers panel and I'll order the layers content in the right order so that my tag order and my reading order is correct when I export to the PDF format.
Right.
One day, I can't explain why, but I chose to do the layers panel first. I don't know why. I was having a moment of unclarity, whatever you want to call it. But for whatever reason, I did the layers panel first. And what I had discovered, it was kind of a cool little discovery, is that in the layers panel, if you click on the right side of the object, it selects the object on the page.
Uh-huh.
And I use a keyboard shortcut in InDesign to add content to the articles panel. So what I discovered is I could click on the object in the layers panel, hit the keyboard shortcut, and it would add it to my articles panel for me. Right. So I could just go like click, shortcut, click, shortcut, click, shortcut, just go all the way up through.
Iterate right through it, yeah.
And all of a sudden my articles panel's done. And I was like, that is really cool. And then I thought about it for a few more minutes, and I'm like, we could totally script this.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, I can't script it. But the good news is I have a lot of friends who are very talented scripters.
Yeah.
And one of the people, we've mentioned him on this podcast before, my good friend Keith Gilbert. I called him up on the phone, right? Because we still do that because we're old Dax. We call people on the phone.
Yeah.
I called him up on the phone. I'm like, hey, Keith, I got this idea for a script. What do you think? And he was thinking about it for a second. He's like, yeah, I think I could do that. An hour later, he sent me the script.
Well, now tell people what the script does.
So what the script does is you go into your layers panel and you organize your content in the layers panel from bottom to top, which, as we all know, sets the reading order in the exported PDF. And once you organize that, you run the script, and the script takes everything from the layers panel and automatically adds it to your articles panel in the correct order.
Now,
so
everything from your layers panel, Chad, while you were talking about this with me earlier, my brain was going 100 miles an hour. You know how I am. I'm always thinking about what's next. How can we improve it? Check this out. You and I were discussing about this earlier. It adds everything that's in your layers panel.
Well, I'm going to pause you for a second.
Oh,
because I thought about that. And so I had him omit lines and shapes from what it adds to the articles panel.
Ah, okay.
Because they don't have any value from a tagging standpoint, right? So it automatically omits those things.
All right.
Yeah.
But what happens if you've got an image that you've got marked as decorative and it's in your layers panel because it's part of the document, right? So here's my thought.
If you truly marked it as an artifact, it'll still get artifacted. Even if you add it to the articles panel, if you go into object export options and you marked it as an artifact, it'll still be artifacted.
Right. So the idea that you've added it to the articles panel, the state of that object, which is artifact, as you designate it by the object export options, will override the fact that it exists in the articles panel. That makes a lot of sense. What I was thinking of is if you had a separate layer, if you had layer 2 and put all your decorative images and whatnot on layer 2, then you could have the script just iterate through layer 1. Because you and I both tell people all the time, when you're designing for accessibility in InDesign, you can't use multiple layers because the script, unless they're in very specific situations, you might be able to, but for the lion's share, you can only have one layer because it can only go in order, right? Mm-hmm. So my thought was the idea of putting all my decorative stuff on layer 2, then the script would iterate through layer 1 and I'm good. But I think your idea of just making sure that those decorative objects have a object export option of artifact solves that, because that's one less step you have to worry about in your document. So,
and awesome. Listen, I mean, you may want to spend a minute or two in the articles panel after you do this and just kind of double check everything, which, as you know, is easy enough to do. And if you wanted to, or if you didn't artifact it, you could always be like, ooh, let's remove that from the articles panel. But by and large, it saves a ton of time, because normally you got to, you got to add, or you got to organize everything in the layers panel, and you got to organize everything in the articles panel. So at least this way, it takes a lion's share of the work out of the picture, and maybe you just have to fine tune it at the end.
Well, and a cool feature, now this kind of breaks a cool feature in Made to Tag though. One of the things I love in Made to Tag is there's this toggle that you have inside Made to Tag under the articles, the I forget exactly which step it's in, but it allows you to see objects that are not in the articles panel already. When you toggle it, then you scroll through your pages. What you want to see is blank pages everywhere, except for maybe header footers or your decorative items. You just want to double check that no meaningful content appears. It's a really great feature to be able to just toggle that and see that. But if you've got those decorative elements in your articles panel, now you can't double check that
True.
they're there.
And that's very true. Yeah, and that's one of my favorite features too. And remember, Dax, we wrote a script for that. So on Keith Gilbert's website, so we're going to put this in the show notes, right?
Yeah.
If you go to gilbertconsulting.com and click on the scripts category, we also wrote a script that will also hide everything that's in your articles panel and then re-show it. So it's basically the same feature that's in Made to Tag. And I literally talked to the folks at Exeo and I got their permission before I did this because I didn't want to step on their toes because their feature is a cool feature. Right. But they felt that it was innocent enough. And they're like, yeah, if you want to write a script to do that, that's totally fine. So if you don't have Made to Tag, which I highly encourage you should have, but if you don't have it, you could still do what Dax and I were talking about using the script. And it basically just hides everything that's in the articles panel, which helps you to just kind of make sure that you put everything in the articles panel that you want. Because as I've said before, the articles panel is an all or nothing proposition. If you use the articles panel, you've got to add everything to the articles panel because only the content of the articles panel is going to get tagged.
If you make sure to go into the hamburger menu for the articles panel and check the box that says use for tagging order in tagged PDF, which is so annoying. I cannot imagine how easy it would be that the moment I drag something into the articles panel and let go, that it would automatically check the use for tagging.
I totally agree with you, Dax. Like programmatically, that should be so simple to do, right? Like the minute I drop something in the articles panel, turn it on, right? And that's what's cool about.
There's never a reason why you would put something in the articles panel and not want to use the articles panel for.
I totally agree. And that's probably one of the biggest questions that I answer for people. People are like, I use the articles panel, but I export to my PDF and everything's still all out of order. Yeah. And I'm like, yep, because you forgot to turn on that checkbox. Yeah. And that's the cool thing about Made to Tag is it turns it on for you.
Yep. Yeah.
You know,
so great stuff, man. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Chad, we didn't have any time to talk about this at all. Normally we have koi talk at the beginning of the show.
Well,
and go ahead.
And well, it's very poignant right now because you literally just got back from Japan.
Yes.
Where you went to pick out your koi.
Exactly. So I got to go for 10 days to Japan. It was an amazing trip. Day one was Disney Tokyo. We just had to do it. Day two we went to Ojiya, which is out by Niigata. And it is the birthplace of koi, where the first carp were bred together to make the koi. And I got to go to a couple of different breeders and I got to pick out my koi from some of these breeders. The ponds were filled with hundreds in every pond of koi that were 3 feet long, like huge koi. Wow. And I got to pick out 4. That's all my budget could allow for was 4. And in a couple months, my dealer, the broker who has the import export licenses, will go pick up his 500 or 1,000 koi that he's going to ship back to the United States and take my 4 along with him. And then I pay some shipping on top of that. And maybe by June, they'll be in my pond.
Now, how do they mark your koi?
So everyone has taken a picture of, and koi, it's a unique fingerprint. Now they're boxed. So I took pictures of them while I was there. The breeder only has maybe 150 or so in a pond. They'll take those 2 out and put them in a different pond where there might only be 50. And so then they can look at the picture and verify the identifying marks and size of that koi based on what they've got in these holding tanks. Sometimes they'll put them in floating net prisons inside these tanks. So if they've got 13 or 15 smaller ones, they'll be in a floating net that they can easily just pull out when they're ready to ship. So
Okay.
some dealers will chip the fish. Some they'll inject the microchip like you do for your pet, and that ensures that, you know, if you have an orange fish, you know, they call orangi. If you have an orange carp, there's every orange carp looks like every other orange carp. So sometimes, you know, it's different versus some that have color pattern differences. So anyway, it's all fantastic. So on a different day, maybe we'll start off with some koi talk. I'll talk about what's going on, but right now Koi Pond's doing great. Excited for these fish to come over here, and I just can't wait. And I'm planning to go back, Chad. I'm already planning my trip for 2026. I'm going to go back during harvest season, where we move them from the outdoor ponds to the indoor holding tanks for the winter time. It's going to be so great.
Very cool. Very cool. Happy for you, man.
Thanks, man.
All right. Well, once again, we just want to thank Vengage for being the sponsor for today's podcast. As a reminder, Vengage isn't just simply a design process, but it takes it up a notch with built-in accessibility features. So head on over to vengage.com and check them out. My name is Chad Chilius.
And my name is Dax Castro, where every other week we unravel accessibility for you.
Thanks, guys.